Grace Falls is it's a fictional place, but it's a place where the gospel truth can be found and is found on a regular basis. Is that echoing?
Hold it closer to your mouth.
Hold it closer?
Just a bit.
Not that close. Speak softly.
Carry a big stick.
We'll try.
There you go.
Is that better? No. Try it now. Maybe you can move up. Is that better?
Yeah. It's fine.
It's fine.
Get it better. Okay. Is that good?
Yes.
Okay. Well, Grace Falls is a fictional place, but it is a place where I think the gospel truth can and is found on a regular basis. It is a place that, it is an island that sits off the coast of Connecticut and Rhode Island. Most of the people, if you were to talk to them on Grace Falls, would tell you that it's Connecticut. It's Grace Falls, Connecticut. It isn't. It's Grace Falls, Rhode Island. But they just think that Connecticut, it sounds more charming, historical, traditional, classy. Rhode Island, Rhode Island has the sounds of, it's like being a dishwater blonde. It's just, But it sits out in the sea, and there's nothing distinctive about it at all, really, except that when you look at it at various times of the year, it'll look like an emerald green or a cerulean blue or a very drab gray or a very mousy brown, and it looks like sort of, the shape of a lemon meringue pie. There's a few peaks and a few church spires and a few trees, but for the most part, folks, there's nothing distinguishing to this round island off the coast of Rhode Island and Connecticut. Nothing that stands out other than the sea itself, which defines it and gives it its meaning, its purpose, its hopes, and its dreams. The fact of the matter is that you may not know this, but you've all been there. I really promise you, you have all been there. You may have forgotten, but you'll remember it as you hear about it. You'll remember it because it's a part of your soul and a part of who you are. You might have been there in the autumn. It's really beautiful in the autumn. If you drive along the coastline underneath the trees, especially after a rain, it's like you're driving through the inside of a pumpkin. Or maybe you were there in the winter time. In the wintertime, everything always seems to look like one of those British Christmas cards. That wet snow that leaves everything looking like the hide of a zebra. Or you could have been there in spring, where the whole earth is just draped with lime lace. It's wonderful. And the whole palette of God just goes to all different kinds of pastels, all the colors of Easter eggs. Pale pink and pale yellow and pale lavender and pale coral and pale white. Or maybe you were there in the summer, the big high season, they call it. Well, that's a time that's sort of like, it makes you think of a box of Crayola colors, bright red and bright orange and bright yellow and bright blue, and because it's time to be like children. It's a time to play like children. The highlight, or the highest place, I should say, on Grace Falls is Mount Windsor. Now, calling this a mount is really a joke. Okay, this is not a mount. This is a very high hill at best. But it is where the country club is, and it is where the Craggy Creek starts. Now, the Craggy Creek is also not a creek. Okay, it's more like three old men had too many beers at the huddle and went up there and took a leak, and whatever came down is just sort of, that's what they call the creek. Now, that creek runs right by the Fountain Blue. Now, the Fountain Blue is what every small town, and let me tell you, every island has, which is the local hangout, the diner, Gosh, every place has that. When I was a kid in Racine, Wisconsin, we always went to the Triangle, that little restaurant in a little triangle over on Douglas and Yout. And the women who worked there were all on those Racine bells, the Amazing. Well, there was only one topic of conversation that morning in the Fontainebleau, and that was that a nor'easter was coming. Now, if you don't know what a nor'easter is, okay, it's because compared to blizzards in Wisconsin, a nor'easter ain't much. But nor'easters can lately become a lot because they're really a winter hurricane. And everybody was talking. Everybody was in the Fontainebleau talking away about how many inches they were going to get and whether the ferries were going to be able to continue to run. It was really amazing to listen to. And of course, Gwen Skovstead was back there. She owned the place and she was complaining about the fact that she'd be working till 9 o'clock tonight. And Elsie Reimerson, who was nearly 80 years old and still the waitress there, had been the waitress since she was 19. They were just, and Elsie kept looking at and going, go home. Why are you here? We're going to have 2 feet of snow. What are you here for? Well, everybody knew why they were here. They were here because they wanted to chatter and talk about the nor'easter and survive the storm. That was a big deal. You know what a wonderful word chatter is? Chatter is just a beautiful term of human beings coming together to just sort things out. Talk. Be human beings. Share your flops, your failings, your victories. All of those things. My gosh. The chatter, it just was wonderful at the Blue. Now that particular morning, I'll tell you who was there already, and it was Stanley Townsend, Bill Zastro, and Herbie Schwenzone. They were at the counter. And then on both ends there was Myra Coleman and Vera Coleman. Now Vera and Myra weren't talking to each other. They were sisters. They had not talked now for 9 months, okay? Now the reason that they hadn't talked, if you talk to Vera, Vera would say that the reason was because Myra started to flirt with Hank Audie. Okay. Now Hank Audie was the owner of the Huddle, the local bar, and they had declared him off limits because they both sort of found him, well, a little attractive. They did, yes. And so they eliminated him and said, neither one of us are going after him. Now I want you to know that Vera and Myra were hovering around 70 years old. Okay. Now, in fact, I think they sailed over that mark, I think, several years ago. They loved sequined sweatshirts. They had platinum blonde hair, and well, the fact of the matter is that let me tell you what really happened. What really sealed the deal was the fact that Vera had gone to a dance that they held at the Audie, at Hank Audie's Huddle. She had gone there and she was so excited because she had a new dress and she had a Dolly Parton wig. She was so pleased with. And she had decided that she was going to wear a nylon over her head because she was convinced that that would hold her hair down and in place so that the wig would really look good. And it really did look good until Hank Audie started to twirl around the floor, and with that, the toe of that nylon came out the bottom. And the sight of that toe flying in the air had cracked up Myra to such a degree that Myra ran out of the huddle yelling, "I'm going to wet my pants." And so that was where the real rift was between these two who were now, they had not talked in months. Well, with that, we should say Father Perfetto came in. Now, everybody was feeling a little bit bad for Father Perfetto. They felt bad for him for about 10 full seconds. Because Father Perfetto had come in on the past Sunday morning and had tried out Gwen Skovsted's new Burrito Delight, okay? Seizing upon the fact that Mexican food was now popular even on Grace Falls. And so Father Perfetto had himself 1.5 of these burritos, okay? Which Gwen had not told him they put a little extra cayenne pepper in his, because according to Gwen, hopefully there was now a chance that some of the people wouldn't fall asleep within the first 5 minutes of his sermon. They just thought it might pick him up a little bit, you know? Well, the truth of the matter is that this poor man got to the communion part, and he had enough gas to propel a Zeppelin. And so as he was serving communion, well, let's put it this way. Zastro turned to him and goes, "Hey, Father Perfetto, I heard you did a Buddy Rich imitation at communion. They're going to call it the Toot Toot Communion now? Everybody was waiting for Father Perfetto to respond, but he wasn't responding, and they started teasing him unmercifully, saying that it was like having machine gun fire. Finally, Father Perfetto, he looked over and he said, you know, Zastro, you've always got a comment for something, you know? Well, the truth is that Zastro always did have a comment for something, always. In fact, when Father Perfetto had invited the bishop in from Stonington, Connecticut, he had gone out and got himself a very ornate, beautiful white alb. And when he got this alb, he also got a very beautiful stole to go with it. And he got one of those kind of brass orbs that you put the incense in, and you swing it, and then the smoke goes all over. Well, he started to walk up and down the center aisle to get ready for the bishop to preach. And to be honest with you, he must have put either too much in or the fire was too much, because the smoke was just billowing out of there. People were coughing and choking. And as he passed Zastro said, "Hey, Perfetto, nice dress, but your purse is on fire." So he did. He had a comment for everything, So, well, in walks Marie Covington. Now, I got to tell you, Marie's a good woman. She's a real good woman. She's best known on Grace Falls for going to the East Hampton Born Again Church. Of course, Elsie Reinerson would always say to people, yeah, born again, she was even worse the second time around. She didn't like Marie, and Marie they had this running feud because Marie, about 6 months ago, thought that she saw the face of Jesus in a sticky bun, the Strudel cinnamon. And Elsie had gone over and looked at it, and lo and behold, it really did look like Jesus. It could be Jesus. So they put it underneath one of those cake things and put it up on the pedestal and let everybody come to take a look at it. But when they brought in a bus from a church over in Connecticut, that was it for Elsie, because they didn't buy anything. They just came over to look at the face of Jesus, and about halfway through this, of having that whole group take up the whole counter and not buy anything, Elsie just took off the cake lid and took that thing and said, and just chewed it. So it's about time that you folks start seeing Jesus in each other. Anyways, not in this stupid sticky bun. But she came in and she ordered herself a sticky bun, a bowl of soup, and a bowl of stew. Elsie looked at her and just made a very innocent comment about when the OA meeting was in Sag Harbor, but that got Marie even madder. So they were glaring at each other. Well, as fate would have it, the men decided that they were going to head on out. And Vera left. She got up and she went to wave to her sister, but she knew there would be no reaction, so she didn't. And so she decided that she was just going to leave, and she did. She left. Now, the men all knew something about Vera. And that is, for 18 years, every single time there was a nor'easter, every single time, Vera would take her orange beetle, her orange VW bug, with a great big black circle on the side, her ladybug she called it, and she would go get herself hopelessly lost somewhere. So that the men at Fontainebleau or at the huddle would have to come out and search for her. She loved it. Now the reason they knew that this was staged was because how many times do you find a woman who is hopelessly lost, who happens to have a thermos of hot coffee, a thermos of hot soup, and several crossword puzzles? So they knew. So Vera, they were looking at Vera and saying, we'll be looking for her this afternoon, but we'll have one more cup of coffee before we go. Well, Vera took off, the men took off, and in comes the Widow Quartet. Now the Widow Quartet are 4 women: Ruth Volz, Ruth O'Toole, Eunice Mager, and Fiona Darling. And those four are there every morning at 10 o'clock for a sticky bun with lots of butter, and every afternoon between 3 and 4 for a sticky bun with lots of butter. If you don't believe that there are truly sticky buns in the world, think again, there really are. They are at the Fontainebleau, and they're huge. So these four women come in and they start to eat their sticky buns, and they're talking, and then they start to laugh. Now the wonderful thing about women when they start to laugh is they don't just laugh. They howl. Women just howl. You know, men guffaw and men try to keep it calm. You know, want to look serene, stable, secure, you know. Women just, whoa, well they were just a howling. And Elsie wanted to know what was up. So Elsie walks over to him and just says, well, what are you guys laughing at? He said, oh, we can't tell you. The hell you can't? Tell me. Now what are you laughing at? There's nobody here now. Vera and Myra both left and the guys are all gone. And well, Fiona says, well, you cannot tell anyone. Now that, they should put that on a t-shirt on Grace Falls. You don't tell anyone, you know. Well, what Fiona said was that almost everybody, of course, in Grace Falls knew that Stanley Townsend and Fiona on the weekends were enjoying each other's company. And, you know, I know as a minister I'm not supposed to talk about this stuff, but we kind of knew that they were enjoying each other's company. Well, what Fiona had done was that Fiona had read about this product that she thought would enhance her ability to enjoy her weekends. So she had bought a tube of this stuff to enhance her weekend, and she had put it on the nightstand by her bed, which would have been really good, but she also put her Bengay there. And what they were laughing about was that she had applied the Bengay, and during the middle of the lovemaking, which usually was quite short-lived, she started to yell at the top of her lungs, oh my God, I am so hot, which Stanley Townsend took as a cue to just, he thought he was on a roll. He thought, oh, this is great. And so he was like in there drilling for China, and he thought, whoa. And, you know, and Fiona just, whoa, she was, I'm sweating. Well, it just went on. And she's just afraid she's not going to be able to repeat the performance, hoping that they don't want a sequel. Poor Fiona. Well, it was worth a good laugh, and the next person that came in was Father McLean. Now, Father McLean was from the Episcopal Church on the island, St. Mary's, and everybody knew where he had been, because whenever there was a nor'easter, he always would make a special visit to Rachel Carpenter, who was the heiress of the A&P fortune. And what we can say about Reverend McLean was that he was Christian but not stupid. You know, he thought, I'm going to make an impression here, you know. And he always knew that he would get a sizable check, he thought, from her, and both for the church and for himself, which he thought was perfectly permissible due to his outstanding pastoral care skills. And so he came in, and he had that look on his face that ministers get. You know, ministers have a tendency to do a quiet performance of a weatherman. You know, they do it vocally. Have you ever noticed that? It's terrible. You know, I mean, they get up, and when they start speaking, rather than speaking in a normal voice, it's sort of like, yea, though I walk through the, you know, it's like Ted Baxter. It's really bad. And that's how he started talking. He started talking in this kind of voice, and it was very clear that he had brought with him, after his visitation to Rachel, the envelope that held the checks. And so he sat down at the counter and he ordered half of a sticky bun, and then he ordered coffee, And he sat down, and he was not going to open the envelope, but you could just tell that they all knew, well, let's see how much you got. You know, he thought it was all secretive and quiet, but he opened that envelope and took out a check written with Rachel Carpenter on the side for $5. He canceled his order on the sticky bun. He took one swig of the coffee and he stormed out. Everybody was speculating on what was in the envelope, but the only one who really knew was Father McLean, who got into his Cutlass and drove off, and on his way home, all he thought to himself is, look, I'm going home. I am no longer on this diet that I've been on. I was going to try to just have half of a sticky bun. I'm going home, and I'm going to have that Hormel chili with the Velveeta cheese. I'm going to have that dip with chips, and I'm having 2 beers, 2 cold ones. And then he said, now I'm going to say a quiet prayer for Rachel. He bowed his head and prayed that the bitch died. And he wasn't supposed to, but he did. You know, he just snuck right out of there. You know, just snuck right off of his lips. You know, heiress. Well, I will tell you that by about 6 o'clock, truth be told, there was already a foot of snow on the ground, and it was a coming down. And everybody had gathered, and everybody was talking, and people were coming in and out. People were having soup, and they were having stew, and they were having sticky buns, and she put a sign up on the window saying we're going to be open until 8 o'clock, and people were just delighted. They thought it was just wonderful and thrilling. But they loved it. They absolutely loved the fact that she was going to be open this long. You see, for them, the Fontainebleau was the one place that they knew of where they were always enough, where they didn't have to worry about what they didn't do or didn't accomplish or didn't achieve. This was their place. And yes, the rich folks came in at times and would kind of give them a little pat on the head to say, we're socializing with you now. But they knew this was their place. And at the Fontainebleau, there was a feeling of being surrounded in grace. Undeserved and unconditional love. It was a beautiful feeling. Well, finally, the 3 men came back in. They were all proud as peacocks as they had found Vera. She was up at Camp Quinnipiac. She had managed to get her car stuck in between the 5 rocks that formed the Quinnipiac 5. And she had gotten her car somehow in there, and she was absolutely delighted that they came to get her. And all she said when they opened the door was, about time. So they all ordered their hot chocolates. And within minutes, Vera came in, and when Vera walked in, you can guess what happened. Myra had her moment, her opportunity, her excuse. And Myra came charging across the Fontainebleau to give her sister a huge hug, an enormous hug. And she just kept saying, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. I don't even know what we fought about. It was so stupid. No, it wasn't. It was about Hank Audie and you were flirting. Don't go there. Okay, she well. Let's get together tonight. Come on. We'll watch the reruns of Carol Burnett. You know, we'll watch Tim Conway when he walks real slow. You know, we'll watch that. And they loved that so much. The thing that was so amazing was to everybody on Grace Falls, watching Vera and Myra was like watching, do you remember that Mrs. O'Wiggins from that show? Mrs. O'Wiggins, you know? They looked just like Mrs. O'Wiggins. They looked just like her. And they just thought to themselves, well, they don't even get it. They don't even know how much they look like her. But the two hugged, kissed, and headed out for an evening of Carol Burnett reruns. And finally, it was time to go. And Gwen was thrilled. She was sick of cooking, and sick of all of them. And they were ready to clean up, and so she finally just went to the front of the blue and just said, "Go home. Just go home." And they all did. They all shuffled on out, and Elsie Reinerson said to Gwen as she put on her coat, she said, "I'm going to go and I'm going to go walk home." Is that okay? "I don't care if you walk home, you're nuts. You see it outside?" She said, "Yeah, but look, we must be in the middle of a lull, but maybe we're in the eye of this thing, because look at it, it's just big snowflakes, those big jumbo flakes. If you lock onto one of them, you can watch the whole thing come down. It's sort of like watching life, you know? It looks like it's coming down so slow, and then boom, a couple seconds and it's gone. Yeah, I'm gonna walk." So Elsie Reinerson left. Gwen promised that she would close everything up, see her in the morning. And Elsie proceeded to walk down the middle of the street, 114, the highway that ran from the South Ferry to the North Ferry. And she was enjoying her evening. She was enjoying looking at the snow and the aura of there were 5 street lamps in Grace Falls, and they looked beautiful. And as she walked, she thought about Michael, her son, who had been killed some 40 years ago in Vietnam. It was so funny about the grieving, because whenever she grieved, it just swarmed. It just would swarm. And it was so powerful, it just would take her breath away. It was like a little mini death every time. And as she walked along, she was just so aware of the beauty of this night and the beauty of the snow, and how much, oh my God, how much Michael had loved snow. And how when it used to be a nor'easter and there was going to be a blizzard and there wasn't going to be school, he would just start to scream. You know, he would, "So, we're sledding, we're going to go sledding, saucers, Mom, toboggans." God, how, and up they would go to the top of Mount Windsong, and he would go whirling down in that saucer, and he'd go down on his sled, and he'd go down with all of his buddies on the toboggan, and he'd expect Elsie to drag it up, which she did. She looked down and took a really deep breath, and then she looked up and she saw somebody walking down the road straight at her. She thought, what dope's out on a night like this? Well, she was out on a drunk, you know. And she just looked, and then she realized he was wearing a uniform. Exactly the kind of uniform that Michael wore in the only picture she still had left. She kind of winced and took another deep breath, and he stopped. Took off his hat, tipped it. And out came his red hair. It was like a peacock plume. He just went like this. And she looked at him, and then he pointed at her. And he tipped his head back like this and started, they used to do this all the time. Every nor'easter, they would try to catch great big Goliath flakes on their tongue, and they just went, and one landed right there, right smack dab. And she went to tell him, and it was gone. And she walked home another 2 blocks, and she wondered to herself if there was anyone she could ever tell. And she wondered if she could prove it. And then she thought, well, it doesn't matter. That was lovely. And she went into her little apartment right behind the funeral home, which she thought was pretty advantageous at 80. And she got in there and she sat down and she made herself a brandy on the rocks, and she just sat with her drink. And she thought to herself, you know what? I can't wait to get back to the Blue tomorrow. I can't wait to find out how much snow really fell, and I really want to hear where they actually found Vera and how long she had actually been there. And in the final 2 blocks of her walk, she had a great idea, and she could not wait to tell the women, all the women at the Blue, of her new great idea for a fundraiser for the fire company, for that new, whatever it was they needed, a new truck. She was so excited she couldn't wait because she was going to get all the women together, and she knew that Fiona Darling, during her coffee and her sticky bun in the morning, would at least go to the bathroom 4 times because she drank 6 cups of coffee. And so the minute Fiona went to the bathroom, she would tell all the women about her great idea, which was a t-shirt. A t-shirt for the summer. A t-shirt with a picture of Fiona on the front of it. And the words, "I'm so damn hot." With a picture of Stanley on the back. And underneath it would just say, "The Driller."
Oh my God.
She couldn't wait. Thank you very much.